Welcome to the How to Find and Keep a Gay Man podcast. I'm Matt Bays, your host, with Matt Heinker, your co-host. And we're here to provide bitchy wisdom for the gay man looking for love. There are a lot of gay men out there looking for a meaningful love experience, and we are here to help. You can follow How to Find and Keep a Gay Man on Instagram and TikTok, where you'll find all sorts of bitchy wisdom about what it's going to take to find and keep a gay man. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Oh, show them your heart, not your part now.
We start with the words of Jesus or his stepbrother, maybe. Show them your heart and not your part. Amen.
Oh my. How's your week been, my dear?
Good. Color me beautiful. Oh, which, by the way, my mom raised me right. No mothers tell their boy, well, I should put it this way. Mothers might try to tell their boys this, but no straight boy cares. I cared. There was this thing called Color Me Beautiful back in the 80s that women used to, like, what are you? Are you a spring?
Spring, summer, fall. Yes.
Winter or fall? Yes.
And they do the fabric colors over your shoulder, right?
Yes. Well, this is why I always wear like navy, black, red, like snappy colors, because I am a winter.
You're a winter.
If you have like darker skin and darker eyes, darker hair, which I used to have, then you are a winter. But you are blue eyes and brown hair. You're probably a summer child.
So if I'm a summer, what do I wear? Pink, purple, lavender?
I don't know. You look up Color Me Beautiful. I only know what I wear. And it's the reason I literally just bought Chris a pink shirt at Target for $6. It's a beautiful rose-colored pink shirt. He looks so good in that color. But I put it on, and I just look a wreck. I need bold primary colors. I'm good, but you put me in yellow.
No pastel for you. Mm-mm. You turn into a
and
fainting.
I love a man in pastels.
Oh, really?
When they look good in pastels. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the movie Father of the Bride?
Yes.
Do you remember her fiance in that movie?
You always give such old movie references. I did watch the movie 30 years ago, yes, but I don't remember what the fiance looked like.
Well, you look him up. You look at one picture and you'll be like, oh, actually, I do remember him. He made my pants go, oh.
See.
He had that wavy
dark
sort
hair.
of Andrew Shue from Melrose Place sort of hair.
Oh my God.
But it was like lighter
reference.
Brown. And then he had light blue eyes and he wore like khakis and a pink shirt.
He was very preppy. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Very preppy and wore the pastels. And I loved that look. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't pull it off.
It's very fuck you to see like a gentleman in a light pastel color. We like it.
Yeah. Color me beautiful, color me bad, color me gorgeous. All right. I am excited about this one, especially because it is everything we've worked for.
Yes.
To get rid of and have learned to, and still learning how to manage, not perfect, but to recognize when shame walks in the room or walks into the situation or is occupying too much headspace.
And its effect on our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it does.
Yeah. This is a great topic. I've been thinking about this a lot this week. You know, essentially, it's kind of the root, one of the very first things to deal with and moving forward to even be healthy enough to be ready for your gay man, you know? And so exciting to talk about. None of this is going to be rocket science. I mean, as I've done some research to prepare for this, it's like, well, that tracks. But just being fully aware of shame. And what are the 3 parts we're going through today?
The 3 parts that we are going through today with shame and sort of categorizing so everybody can follow along is number 1, how did it get there? Number 2, how is it affecting or impacting my life or my romantic life specifically?
Sure.
And then 3, how do we get rid of it? So how did it get there? How is it impacting my life? How do I get rid of it?
How do I get rid of it? Hardest part. All right.
Yeah. And remembering as we start, I do want to say this. I want to make sure that we say there is a difference, a very big difference between having information and living it out.
Sure.
You might be very bright. You might be smarter than the both of us, but having the information, learning the information, reading about the information is not living it out.
Yeah.
Is not having the experience in your body, in your life. So you can have the information, but putting this into practice is a whole different animal, which is why we always say, get a damn therapist. The accountability helps us to be able to figure out how to move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also want to mention, Matt, that next week we have our first guest on the podcast.
Yes. Looking forward to this. Yes.
Because we practice what we preach. Alicia Bridgeland, who is my therapist, will be joining us. And she is going to talk to us about neuropersonality structures and how that relates to choosing an appropriate mate, gay or straight.
Ooh, she's going to take
us deeper. But for our
deeper.
purposes, gay. Yes, she is. And not only is she coming on the podcast, you may want to tune in on YouTube because she's gorgeous. Every time I walked in her office, I would be like, oh, girl. She always had some nice fitted dress on and,
hair was right. Face was beat.
Hair, outfit, shoes, head to toe, H to T.
Come on now. I love that. I love that.
Before we get there, just give us a quick update. What's going on in your world, wedding boy?
Oh my God. Yes, so much. We're both just working, trying to get this wedding finalized. I traveled this week. I was in Appalachia part of Tennessee. I found out that I definitely could never live in the South. Okay. Lots of gun shops, lots of Trump signs, lots of hillbillies, and had this fabulous blue jacket on. People were looking at me like I was naked. You've never seen such a thing.
I like the hillbilly gays, though. I do like the hillbilly gay.
I don't know if I have any hillbilly gays in my life, but that sounds fun.
They're down there. They are.
Yes, for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the wedding is coming. We're a month out. Tomorrow is 4 weeks out. So it's down to the wire here. Scheduled hair appointments, glam appointments for the mothers and the sisters. It's coming down the pike. I'm excited. I'm getting nervous, but
and we are a week away from our Bachelor Royale in Chicago.
Oh, Lord, help us. Jesus, take the wheel. I'm already praying about that.
I'm so excited.
We're going to have a good time.
Are we doing some gay karaoke?
Of course we are.
Somebody around here may have their song already picked out.
We're going to be doing some gay karaoke. There's going to be little go-go situations. There's going to be some drag at some point in the evening. It's going to be a very full night. Yes.
I cannot wait. Maybe we should have posted this afterwards so we could deal with our own shame for all that's going to transpire on that lovely weekend.
Good point. Yes.
Okay. We want to get started.
Shame. How did it get there? I think that for the gay community in particular, this is a huge issue. I read tons of stuff trying to get ready for this, but I thought that the National Library of Medicine, of all of the places I looked, had some really interesting studies. They have a whole section on shame and studies around that are clinical. Yeah. And they said that the LGBTQ plus community in general, the large majority suffers from what they call sexual minority stigma, the articulation of negative attitudes, that and feelings about homosexuality that just exist in our culture.
Is that consistent with internalized homophobia?
Exactly. So they say that this results, first of all, in elevated levels of stress that we just learn to live with, shame, guilt, etc. And it manifests itself in internalized homophobia. So, all of us are, at whatever point you are at your journey, that's a huge part of it, dealing with the internalized homophobia from the elevated levels of stress that you carry because of the world around us and the messaging around who we are as people and the judgment attached to that. So again, as I said before, at the beginning of the podcast, I don't think that's mind-blowing or revelatory. I think we know that. I think to your point earlier, it's one thing to know it, but how do we put into practice to move forward better and different with this knowledge?
We'll definitely take some time to talk about that. First, we want to just get a little background on what it is, or at least the perspective that we're speaking from.
For sure. The internalized homophobia manifests itself in feelings of inadequacy, chronic shame, chronic guilt. That means, we talked about our inner saboteur. I think chronic guilt is one of the things our inner saboteur is going to throw at us.
Yeah.
And we've talked on other podcasts about how these things are never going to be completely gone. So it's not about ridding them from our lives, but how do we manage that? But they come from us just growing up in environments where we get consistent messaging that we are not okay as we are. And guilt is the result of an action that you do that you regret. Shame is a feeling that comes from inherently who I am is not okay.
And that's something that it's impossible for me to address the issue of shame without talking about Brene Brown, because she's just done so much work on it. It's in all of her books,
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the things that she talks about too, the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt can be a good thing. Shame is never a good thing. But she also talks about, rather than just thinking about it in, I have this shame or I'm carrying this around, but where it comes from. And Brene talks about how, it's not something that we're born, we don't come out with shame. And it's why children spin in the grocery store. She, maintains that shame is directly related to our environment, that as soon as a teacher, when we're young, critiques like our artwork, or a parent asks, why did you do that? You should have done it this way. That's the beginning of the shame messages. And that can happen growing up in a church where if things are expected of you, if you didn't fall into certain gender roles, et cetera, then you feel shame. And this is what I think is so interesting about it, because when you think about how to raise kids right, or how to be a great teacher or whatever, some of the things that I read was talking about how shaming someone is the easiest and fastest way to get behavior that I don't like to change.
Which is why it's used so heavily. And
I don't have time to ask all the questions around this of the children. I'm just going to shame them into changing their behavior with people. It takes more energy and time to ask, hey, what are you thinking about when you do that? Or tell me what's going on. I remember somebody in my life, I always try to talk about this stuff without talking about my ex. But I do remember a time I was working through a ton of shit with and I was shaming her hard. And she stopped. She did not get defensive. And she just went, oh, honey, you're talking to
Wow.
I couldn't even speak. You're not talking to me. I don't do that. It's okay.
Oh, geez.
Oh, shit. I just wanted to come at her even harder. You know what I mean? Because it was either that or deal with my own shame over all of this. And listen, we'll do whatever we can to protect our shame.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Because when we deal with it, when somebody comes after it, we feel like we're going to die, Matt. It feels like death. And so we will do anything we can to protect it. Don't even come around here. This is mine. I'm going to protect it. Even though it's killing me, I'm going to protect it. This is mine.
Yeah. Which is terrible, because then, the other part of the research, you read all the physiological effects of shame, how adversely it affects your well-being. And ironically, it's funny that you say the quickest way to get someone's behavior to change is with shame. A lot of the studies that I read said that it's not an effective long-term change agent, not a positive change agent. So the behavior might change, but it's coming from a really negative reinforcement, or it's doing something inside of you as you adjust your behavior that's very negative or destructive. It's never going to positively make someone make better choices or move forward more healthy.
Yeah. It gets immediate results, but it breeds secrecy.
Yeah.
I'm still going to do this, but I'm not going to let anybody see that I'm doing it.
Yep.
And resentment and fear. There's all kinds of shit that comes with this.
Someday these conversations will be obsolete, but as a gay person in the world, you're just going to grow up dealing with negative messaging from society. But then on top of that, if you come from a religious background, then the prevalence of this is 2 times as difficult, 2 times as likely. I myself, I don't really feel like I deal with a lot of shame from the world around me. I'm pretty out and proud. If I think about the parts of shame that are within my inner saboteur, it's really the messaging that I try to let go of from these religious environments. And so I think that people that grew up in the church, you've shared stats before that over half of us grew up in the church. I read something this week that said if you lived in the southern part of the United States, there's a 70% likelihood, if you're LGBTQ plus, you were raised in the church, you're African American, goes up to 80. So a lot of us grew up in really religious environments, and the shame from those places is harder to completely extract.
Yeah.
I don't feel fully whole or good about myself a lot of the time, where I work through a lot of these feelings on a regular basis. Where is it coming from? How did it get there? A lot of it is residual from the church.
We grow up with messages. These are leaders that we revere, either our parents or teachers or pastors or whatever. And so we hear these messages over and over, and they're lies, but we take them in. And when we believe them, that's when shame is born.
Yeah. And when we believe them. Yeah.
And so we have to go through an undoing. My friend Laura says that shame is an unreliable narrator in your life.
Yes.
Think about that.
It's never constructive.
No, it's talking about a path you're not even trying to get down. Wherever you're going, it's giving you instruction that is not about the places that you intend to go. It's about places you've been. It's about places where you go if your life is fucked up and a mess. It is not a healthy path. So it's an unreliable narrator. I need the right voice speaking to me.
Absolutely. Moving into the how does it affect my life, I think that it's really important to try to pay attention to ways in which it does, because it can touch every area of your life as a gay person if you're not careful. I read from the National Library of Medicine, they did a study last year of a sample set of 400 gay and lesbian Americans. I thought it was interesting because I think that shame prevents us from being all that we can be in the world. One of the ways that shows up in our community is there's not a lot of gay people who have really achieved high levels of success in business or their career. That's changing every day. But this sample set, for example, 40% of the group reported incomes of less than $25,000 a year, and high unemployment rate, reoccurring unemployment rate within the group.
Yeah.
In, half partnered or married, half single. So no skew there. And that's something that I see in my community, even locally. How many of us have enough confidence to believe that we are just as qualified to have the same level of success as heterosexuals? That's something that I have fought hard against in my career. I mean, I shared in previous podcast how I was up for a pretty significant promotion about a year ago, and I felt it necessary to disclose that I was gay, as if that was something I needed to apologize for. But I also have had to fight twice as hard within my career, maybe more for my own sake than, out of necessity, but I've had to fight really hard to get myself to believe that I'm just as qualified. I'm just as worthy. I'm just as good at what I do. And I can reach these levels of success as someone who is gay and openly gay. And I think that piece is really hard for our community. And that is a really tangible way that shame has affected our community's lives. We don't get as far because we don't believe that we deserve it or they're capable of it. We're not proud enough of who we are and what we have accomplished to reach for the same things.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you had it to do over, is that something that you would still do today?
That's a funny question. I would say still yes. And not because necessarily I feel like I need to apologize for that. I think that maybe my initial posture, there was a little bit of that in it, which I don't like. But still today I would, just because I want to be completely authentically who I am and not hide. And I think that if, I'm in a very conservative industry, I'm in insurance, and it's important to me to work in an environment where I feel safe and accepted and where people know who I am.
I see. Yeah.
But I want my results to speak for themselves, and I'm going to push forward and ask for the same things. I'm going to reach for the same things as those around me, because I am worthy and I'm just as good. But that's really hard work that we have to do as a community,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as we're asking the question, how is it affecting my life or my romantic life? For me, the first way is people pleasing. That when we seek to please others, we lose our identity.
People pleasing is how I ended up married to a woman for 12 years with children. I was the person that I believed that I needed to be to please those around me, my family, to be acceptable to God.
And Matt, that's what leads to resentment, bitterness, and secrecy right there.
Yeah.
Is because you start stuffing, and you think you're doing it for a good reason. And that's what it does. It breeds. So secrecy for me looked like addiction, alcohol.
Yeah.
I had to quiet all that shit somehow.
Yeah.
And that's what worked until it didn't work.
Until it didn't work. Well, this same group of people in the study, 54% of the sample scored in the hazardous range for alcohol use. 12.3 scored near dependence on alcohol/alcoholism. So 63% of this group struggle with substance abuse to a significant degree.
Yeah.
And we see that over and over again in LGBTQ plus studies. We are self-medicating the shame a lot of the time.
Yeah.
How does it affect my life? But, forget about shame. If you have some sort of a dependence on alcohol, it can ravage your life. And talk about not being able to show up for a relationship or tend to your gay man every morning. If you're riddled with addiction, nothing is going to be what it could be.
Yeah. Another way it impacts is by keeping us from saying what it is that we want to say or need to say, because shame has a way of either making us feel like we are too much or not enough. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Too much or not enough. Yeah.
You spoke to, your work. And I would say to me, that's sort of a creative thing too, because a lot of gay men tend to be very creative people. And I think often it keeps us from being the creative people that we are because we're afraid of being vulnerable. We can't handle the judgment of others,
Absolutely.
So we don't put ourselves out there.
Absolutely.
Or we overcorrect and we put ourselves so far out there.
Or you're being the caricature because you want to be the court jester.
Yeah. I'll just be what you think I am.
Exactly. What you expect.
Yeah.
It's really funny. And that specific piece is what I'm on a journey on right now. Like when I go to work, like the other day I went in and I have yes, of course I have a Gucci bag. You're welcome. Like I'm going to represent my community well with excellence. But first of all, I walk in, and my boss is like, nice bag. That looks like a women's bag. And I was like, you need to come spend a day with me because you look like a sad dad right now. This ensemble is upsetting. You don't feel good in it. You're not living your best life right now.
You told him his ensemble is upsetting?
I told him it was upsetting. This man is worth lots of money and he wears pilly cashmere sweaters. But my point is, so like I come in and I don't feel the need to be like a Carson Kressley extra court jester like we just talked about, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to wear what I want to wear. I'm going to be who I am. I'm not going to apologize for it. Like I used to feel like I needed to wear the blue suit and the white shirt and I needed to present very masculine and I needed to be careful how gay I was. Man, those days are over. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Because I've really, really done a lot of work on getting rid of the shame attached to any part of my identity. But, but that's a process. But when you start to move out of that, it's just incredibly liberating. I mean, I'm a completely different person professionally now than I was even 3 years ago. Yeah. And my point in all of that is showing up for yourself and
showing up for yourself. I love that. Can I just tell you a story of how I showed up for myself?
Please give it to us.
Okay. So when I came out, I had been leading worship in really large churches, the kind that are not affirming of LGBT community and are sending a lot of hate messages. Frankly, I'd worked in those for a lot of years. And so when I came out, I had sort of baked into my life all of these people who were going to have an opinion about my life. Now, I didn't really care about all of those people because I had grown enough to know that they're not significant in my life. They're people that are watching. These are not people I depend upon, to show me love or return love, whatever, or respect. But I did have some really, really close friends. And some of those people I felt like were going to be on the fence with my decision to come out. So I write this article. I decided to do it this way. Not everybody that comes out has to do it this way, but I had a large following at that point. And so I wanted to put it out there in my words. I didn't want people telling the story for me. So I wrote an article about coming out, the process, what that looked like for me, why, everything behind it, and posted it. And I had a lot of love and a lot of support, still grateful for that. And then, of course, I had some of the hate too, and the bashing and the, overly familiar questions from people who shouldn't be asking about my children or my ex-wife. It's not their business,
Exactly.
But one of my very, very close friends who I had spent a lot of time reaching out to over and over again when we were separated and going through this divorce, because I needed them.
You needed their support.
Yes. And they kind of wouldn't really respond or return anything. And I thought it was so strange because we were such good friends that I thought certainly, even if they don't agree with me, they're not going to do that. Well, they did. They just went silent. And I kind of had let it go. So when this article came out, 9 months later, after I had finalized everything, one of those people, she put a angry emoji on my coming out post, an angry emoji.
No communication until that.
Zero. Didn't respond to a text message, email, voicemails, nothing. And then put an angry thing there. So here is me taking hold of my power. Now, I don't have to get nasty, show up on her doorstep or whatever.
No.
But we were very good friends. I'm talking, we had vacation together.
Chosen family. Yeah.
Yes, we absolutely were, at their children's birthday parties, them at ours, all of that. Knew all of their parents, all that kind of stuff. So you bet your ass I screenshot that angry emoji with her name next to it. And I text messaged it to her. I said, not a word from you in 9 months. We're friends, period.
Yeah.
This is not how you treat friends, just FYI.
Boom.
Because I thought, no, this person needs to know this, even in love. This is something I would tell them if they sat down with and told me that they did this to someone else. I would say, oh, no. That is not how we handle ourselves. But it felt good in that moment because I think I would have just felt awful about myself previously. It felt good in that moment to own it and kind of say, no, I'm not going to let you serve this to me. If they had just been some random person I didn't know, I wouldn't have responded at all. But this, like I said, this was chosen family.
Well, and she was trying to serve you up some shame and you threw it back at her because you didn't deserve that. Yeah.
And Matt, can I say to the wrong person, you want to know why our suicide rates are so high? Here is somebody that you've loved selflessly, and they've loved you. You've loved on their children, and you go through one of the most difficult times of your whole life and do one of the most courageous things you could ever do to be met with. I'm not going to have the decency to even speak to you. I'm going to send you something that says, I'm angry with you.
Yeah.
And you wonder why the suicide rate is high, why
the substance abuse. Exactly. Yeah.
Not cool.
Thank God you were healthy enough to not be destroyed by, I remember when you sent that post out and it was really well written and beautiful and you did have a lot of support, but I couldn't believe how many people were stupid enough to say stuff that was just not cool. And thank God you were healthy enough at that point to not be destroyed by all that, and I think that's the work that we have to do because that type of messaging is coming for us in some format from some people connected to us. I don't care who you are. Yeah. And we have to, if we want to live peaceful lives, I'm going to talk about living, like grabbing for peace or protecting your peace. It's like one of the most important things to me. But one of the things that is most important for us to do in protecting our peace is to not allow those types of shame-filled messaging, shame-filled acts, whatever, to affect us negatively. So we're not self-medicating. And that is really hard work that's never done.
You have to do it in community.
You have to do it in community.
Somebody has to know. Somebody has to know it's a struggle for you.
Exactly. Which goes into how do we get rid of the shame? How do we break the cycle?
Before we get there, I want to talk about something because we talked about how it's impacting our romantic life as well.
Oh, for sure.
And you're going to hear me say Laura's name a lot because she's a person that I ask about this. And when I was talking to her about this, she wrote something down, a couple things actually that I thought were just perfect. One of them was this: when you think about how does shame impact my romantic life? She says, if you are riddled with shame and do not believe you are worthy of respect and love, you will find a partner who agrees with you.
Oh, woo.
Like
so true.
Attracts like. Lack attracts lack.
Lack. Oh, my word.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she says this, and this is where I was talking about community. Our shame stories are insistent. They demand to be told. And when we don't reclaim them, process our stories of harm, and learn to cope in healthy ways, which we just talked about, then our stories find a way to tell themselves. Okay.
Yes.
Here's how they tell themselves: through addiction, infidelity, self-harm, promiscuity, disordered eating, you name it.
You name it.
Yeah, that's when I always say it's when that stuff is coming out sideways.
For
But
sure.
if we don't learn to tell our stories of shame to somebody and reclaim and process them in a healthy way, they will tell on themselves, and they already are.
And if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? Which means you are not ready to receive your gay man, and you don't have the capacity to love him back every day of your life. If you are in that, if you're circling the drain with those things.
Yeah. How in the hell are you going to love somebody else? And how in the hell are you going to let somebody love you?
Love you.
You can't.
Yeah. Exactly.
This stuff is foundational to how to find and keep a gay man.
Absolutely. And to your point earlier, it's one thing to know this. It's another thing to put it into practice, because it is daily work.
Yes.
To put this stuff into practice. I tell you what, the amount of therapy I've been to, it is amazing. And still, as much work as I've done, I get up some mornings and I look at my beautiful hubs and I think to myself, I deserve him. Our love is a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't have to be ashamed of it. I still today have to do that sometimes, which is crazy, but it shows how deeply rooted those things are and how hard we have to work to move forward, you know?
Yeah.
And we have to just be really aware of that.
Yeah. And we've all heard time heals all wounds. Time does not heal all wounds. Work and time heals wounds. It takes work. You're just going to get old. Time's just going to go on. Nothing's going to happen just because the clock.
Well, I believe you were telling me this week that you had a conversation with a 72-year-old gentleman who's still single, because he's been doing the same thing for decades. Sleeping with this boy, dating this boy, and really have never put your back into any kind of work or moving forward in a relationship. You know, how could my life be better and different in some way? He's 72 and single and still up on the grinder, and Lord knows what else. And again, no shame if that's what you really do want. Maybe it is.
No, it's not.
Hard to believe. Hard to believe, though.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about it. How do we get rid of shame?
Psychology Today has a very specific few steps that they recommend to pursue in what they call breaking the cycle of gay shame. First is obviously to come out and live an authentic, fulfilling life. So you have internalized homophobia or whatever, or you're still dealing with the high levels of shame. How many people do we know that are not out? Or I'm actually, again, I should get my life coach license. I've got somebody that reached out to me this week. I'm meeting with a guy later today who's 41 years old, grew up in an uber religious environment, has never been in a relationship, never been married to a man or a woman, and he's not out, but he's very gay. And he is very stuck and struggling, and he deals with crippling levels of guilt and shame, which is why he's never been in a relationship. So I'm going to meet with this guy and talk him through that. But again, one of the things I'm going to tell him is you have to get to a point where you're strong enough and love yourself enough to come out and live an authentic, fulfilling life. Nothing is going to be good until you do that. And that's terrifying. It's going to require a lot of you, but you got to do that, you know? So took us a while to come out. A lot of compassion for that, but we all have to come out. Number 2, acknowledge your shame, acknowledge the inner saboteur. Where is it coming from? In what areas of my life do I feel shame? What is the messaging that I'm dealing with when I feel shame? And then 3 is the most important. Practicing self-compassion through an internal dialogue of healing. Treat yourself with kindness and love. Stop negative self-talk. Become forgiving of others. Tell yourself, even if you don't believe it, like I have to do some days, that you are worthy of love, that you are worthy of respect, that you are enough to give to somebody else. And participate in the LGBTQ community. We've got to have community. We've got to have friends, people that come around us and show us love. The last one is seek support through mental health experts. Get a damn therapist, which is what we preach as well. So coming out, acknowledging the source, practicing self-love and compassion, living in community, and getting mental health help. We all need it.
Yeah. The one where you talked about sending positive messages to yourself reminds me of that Queen Brene. Her antidote to shame is empathy.
Yes.
And then she has that wonderful quote, if you put shame in a petri dish, it needs 3 ingredients to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment.
Whew. Yeah.
And then she says, if you put the same amount of shame in the petri dish and douse it with empathy, it cannot survive.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. That's treating yourself with kindness and an internal dialogue of healing. That's empathy towards yourself, being gentle with yourself. Yeah.
And that's a learned response, because she
It
also
is.
says that shame is the warm feeling that washes over us. It makes us feel small, flawed, and it makes us feel like we're never good enough. And understanding that and knowing how to shake it off, it's hard work. It's like waking up. You know,
Yeah.
you have that information. I know what that
Yeah.
information is. And then I have that feeling, and it's like, I don't know exactly how to shake it off. And that happens by practicing. It happens by having a therapist, the accountability, the consistency, the hard work.
I was just
you
going
know?
to say, all of this is rooted in the P word, practice.
And when we talk about community, that community is so important, because there's some statistic out there, I can't remember what it is, but about we are like the people that we are around.
Yeah.
So if the company I'm keeping is just bitchy, catty, mean, and self-loathing, that's what I'm going to be. It is not my job any longer to pull everyone out of the pit, trying to rescue them. And I hadn't even fucking rescued myself. So no, not anymore. I will help anyone. It's why I'm a life coach. But I have to surround myself with like-minded people who care about the world and care about themselves and love themselves, or attempting to.
And love and celebrate you. And love and celebrate you.
100%. So if you're coming at me with an angry emoji, listen.
Girl, bye.
2 tears in a bucket, motherfuck it.
I tell you what, that's what Jesus would have done.
Move away from me. I don't want you in my life.
And that moves into not just community of friends, but family. I mean, we've talked about a little bit about all the drama with mine around this wedding. Like, what is clear to me now is, I don't care if you're my family. You don't have a right to be in a relationship with me just because we're family. If you are not safe, people that are not for me don't get my piece. That's the first step. But second of all, if you're not safe, if you're not kind, then we can't really have a relationship. Or if we do, there's going to be really, really strict boundaries and limits to the amount of time that I'm going to spend with you, because I will surround myself with people that are for me. And that's really so important in combating shame. Yeah. And we can't apologize for that.
Yeah. One of the things that really helped me, Matt, because I believe this is how we get rid of shame, one of the ways is, it doesn't mean that we have to cut people out of our lives. If they choose to cut themselves out, whatever, we don't have control over that. But it doesn't mean that I have to cut people out. But I always look at people in a number system, 1 to 10, on a level of intimacy. Are they a 10? And a 10 is Chris to me.
Sure.
That's my 10. And then my 8s and 9s are my really, really good friends. You know what I mean? That's you, Laura, Beth. Those are my 8s and 9 people that I just fully trust. We want, instinctively, our parents there.
Yes. That's such a good point.
And we'll say we don't. We'll say we don't, but we do. Yes. We want our parents there. And we want those people often that will not give us approval. We want them there. And so we keep trying to live in relationship with them as if they are an 8 or 9, when they are clearly not, and do not have the tools. Yes. They don't have to be awful people. They don't have the tools to be an 8 or 9. And so we have to figure out how to lower them down to a 2 or a 3, because when I'm approaching them at a 2 or 3 level, I don't have expectations. Are lowered. Yep. Yes, thank you. Expectations are premeditated resentments. So if I can lower my expectations, then I'm not expecting them to come through. And I will be able to say things to my parent like, oh, I'm not going to talk to you about that.
And I tell you what, what you're saying is so true. And you also can't come to them thinking that you, by things that you say or do, staying in close relationship with them, are going to get them to an 8 or 9. I've learned that the really hard way with my own parents. They are doing the best in what they have to give me. They're doing their best in the amount of approval or whatever they're able to give me, but they're not safe to be an 8 or a 9. So I am not, it's not safe for me to treat them like they're an 8 or 9, because that gives them the opportunity to make me feel shame.
Yes.
So we have to cut that shit out. Yeah.
If you need to cut them out, that's your business, but be careful of that. I've seen a lot of people that just like cut them completely out. I'm never going to speak to them again. And then that fucks with them too. If they will receive boundary setting, Like I've put you down, and I've done this. I've practiced this with
Mm-hmm.
very close people where I've
Mm-hmm.
moved them to a 3. And then one person specifically, I've watched crawl all the way up to about a 6 or 7
Mm-hmm.
by,
Mm-hmm.
if they've respected those things.
That was their journey. It's not something that you had to manually do. They did that.
That was
Yeah.
their work to do. I didn't do it for them. I didn't talk them into something.
And you didn't expect that of them. People can surprise you, and that's beautiful. It's not typical.
Yeah. Listen, I have been very surprised in my life by a couple people very, very close to me and very dear to my heart. I've been very surprised at how they have decided to get on the journey with me. And listen, if I see you moving forward, they are not where I am, but I'm watching them change little by little.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hate on that.
Yeah.
They're doing their best. God, it took me years, decades to come out. Who am I to expect them to be there today?
Yeah, that's fair. That's more than fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you categorizing people like that, I love that number system, is you being protective of the amount of shame that comes into your life, bottom line. So how do you get rid of it? These people are over here and they get this percentage of my time, effort, emotional energy.
Well, and it helps you, Matt, if you run into a shame situation, you know not to go to that person. You go to the people that have earned the 8 or 9 in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I'm not going to this person, even though that's who I would want to go to because they might be my parent.
Yeah.
Here's the words. You don't get to go to them. You don't get that.
Unfortunately, you don't get
Unfortunately, but I promise if you can accept that, you will be so much better off. And you can say, that's not fair. You're goddamn right. It's not fair, but it is real.
But it's real. And you find that in other ways that can fulfill you. We talked in an earlier episode. I've got 3 blood relatives at this wedding coming up in a few weeks. And initially, that really messed me up and made me feel sad. It's not what I wanted. But then you look at the over 100 people that are going to be there that are our chosen family. And a big chunk of them are maybe not 8s or 9s, but high on the scale. People that love and celebrate us, people that are safe, people that are in our lives and good influence and whatever. And that is really beautiful. I don't lack love in my life. I don't lack acceptance or community. The things that I thought that I needed from even my parents or immediate family, I don't need because, we have over time, Ty and I both have done the hard work of really being careful to build community with people that are good. And if you do that, man, that's powerful antidote against living with high levels of shame, you know?
And when you think of the empathy being, an antidote to shame and the love that comes from the people, the caveat that's complicated about that is that when you have those people in your life that continue to send shame messages and you're waiting on them to love you and they're not, you don't really receive the love from the others. When you can let that go, you are opening channels to receive love from other people. But if you keep focused on that one person or those few people that aren't giving you love, it's like the daddy wound. When you finally let go that your dad has not been a dad and accept that, you begin to allow others be a paternal influence in your life. You don't get it unless you let that go.
Because the people that are not for you don't get your peace. That's what I'm going to put on my socks when I get them made. People that are not for me don't get my peace. I'm going to go over here with it and receive all the goodness in other places and be whole.
And I'm going to need you to let me know if one of those people shows up at your wedding that is not for you so that I can pull them onto the dance floor and dirty dance with them. Especially if it be a man. I'll have my shirt off and grinding.
I love it. Please. It's funny. We were talking last night with the kids. We're having dinner, the footage of that. You'd love it. But it's Black History Month. And so we were talking around the table with the kids about, what that means. And they were like, did you know that they used to not let people of color drink out of the same water fountains? They couldn't use the same bathrooms. Yeah. Sometimes they couldn't go to restaurants and get food served to them. And they were just like, what in the world? Like, what kind of barbaric world did we live in where that was acceptable? And that wasn't that long ago. They were like, almost felt shameful that that's a part of our past. And I thought to myself in that conversation, like, in this day and age, those types of things that that happened we're ashamed of it as American people, and it's just completely ridiculous. We can't even imagine how we operated that way as a society. Mm-hmm. And I kept thinking, in the next 20 or 30 years of my children's life, these types of topics, it'll be just as absurd. Yeah. We cannot believe there was a time when gay marriage was not legal. We cannot believe there was a time when gay rights were something that had to be fought for, And the shame that we collectively deal with as a community, I hope and pray will be a fraction of what it once was. And I see the world changing, and I'm encouraged by that. Yeah. And I know that we have a bright future as a community, but we got to do our work today and get rid of the shame.
Yeah. So we do know that work is how we get rid of it, that time absolutely does not heal all wounds. Mm-hmm. Again, my friend Laura says, when we are able to tell our stories and have them met with empathy, we are able to integrate them as a story in our life and not the story.
For sure.
Then it's not who we are. It's just what happened to us.
And then empathy primarily comes from us and our daily practice of internal positive self-talk, self-love. Yeah. Internal dialogue of healing. That's got to be just foundational for us as gay people.
Yeah. And for me, relationships are they're everything to me. But those close people, the friends, God, I could just cry thinking about what I have experienced over the last 5-6 years by way of support and love.
Yeah.
That shaking those messages that I was a bad dad, that I was a bad person for leaving the church or leaving my ex-wife or all of those things. I have so needed the voices of people to say, you're doing your best to survive here. And no one is better for you not living as your true self.
Absolutely.
You need to live your most authentic self, who you are. That's the gift that you bring to the world. You can't do that if you're living compromised.
And when you were clear on that and had received enough love from yourself and others, you were ready for Chris. And what a life-changing thing that was for you.
Yeah. I would not have been able to receive that love.
You could have missed out on him if you had not done your work.
Dear God.
We don't want anyone to miss out on their boy.
No, not at all. All right. I have a closing prayer.
Really? Dr. Reverend Silky Nutmeg Ganache, lay that on us.
Well, this is my version of a prayer.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I wonder if you believe in God, many gods or just one, the universe or yourself, or your sweet little grandma that loved you so. Whatever entity or person showed you the most love, that's the voice to listen to. That's the one that will always tell you what to do. So you're looking for a man, you want a love that will go on and on, that when all is said and done, you'll leave this world having loved someone you've been loving for years because your love stood the test of time. Oof. When it comes to true love, here's what we actually believe. Someone or something wants to get a meaningful love to you more than you could ever ask or imagine, but you must receive it, which is the harder part. You wonder, how do I open my hands to it? My darling, you already know. You've always known how to let love in. So keep coming back here and we'll keep looking with you for how to find and keep a gay man. And all the people said,
amen.
Woo! Amen.
That was beautiful, honey. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yes. Please like us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok. And if you like this show, rate and review it, Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Those reviews actually help. And until next time,
live in rivers of self-love.
Oh, I like that. Live in rivers of self-love.
Yes. Until next time.
1, 2, 3, 4. That's it for us today. For more bitchy wisdom, follow How to Find and Keep a Gay Man on Instagram and TikTok at, you guessed it, How to Find and Keep a Gay Man. And until we meet again, get a therapist, don't be an asshole, protect yourself, call your mom, and remember that you deserve a meaningful love. Bye.